There are moments that challenge what we think is possible, that defy the odds and our expectations. Those moments are what we at MU Health call yes moments. And they're changing the face of cardiovascular care. One breakthrough discovery, one advanced treatment, one miraculous outcome at a time. Yes makes it possible.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on Friday, June the 9th. My friend Barbara Buffaloe is here. Good to have you here, Barbara Buffaloe.
Hi, Paul.
And you brought along a special guest today.
I did. I brought ERIC HEMPEL with me. You know, you always ask me, Barbara, what should I do to save energy in my house? And I was like, I can only tell you so many times. So I brought a really big prop and another person.
Okay, ERIC HEMPel.
I'm not the prop.
Welcome to Radio Friends.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, if you're listening on the radio, we will try to draw a picture for you. Is what we have. If you're watching on television, you see we've got insulation here, attic insulation.
Right.
Now, let me ask you before we get into this, Eric, is the attic the most important part of the house that needs to be insulated?
You know, I don't know if I'd say it's the most important, but it's definitely the place that is usually easiest to improve. Easiest meaning it's easier to get there, and it's also the least expensive and can be the most cost-effective way to...
Is the attic.
Yes, the attic.
Now, if you go up to your attic and look in the attic, I would imagine that most people, the insulation goes up to the top of the rafters, right?
Right, like if you can see your rafters, that's what you're talking about.
Yes, if you look in your attic and you can see your rafters, you do not have enough insulation.
Yeah, spoiler alert. Right. That's not enough.
Not nearly enough.
Not enough.
Okay, what if you go up into the attic but you can't see the rafters and you push some of that insulation aside and you've got maybe an inch or two above the rafters?
Still not enough.
It's
Sorry.
not enough.
No.
You lose.
Okay,
Did not win.
And this prop that we're showing here right now, a foot of insulation is not enough.
No, we don't recommend just a foot of insulation.
On the very end of this prop, if you can see this, if you're looking at it on television or on YouTube, 1.5 feet of insulation is what is needed, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Now that's a lot. When I'm looking at that, that's a lot of insulation.
It is. It's definitely more than we see in most houses where people have complaints about comfort or high bills, for sure. Yeah.
How much difference is that going to make if you have 1.5 feet of insulation blown into your attic?
So if you start off with just this minimal amount, say you can see the top of the ceiling joist, you have maybe 6 inches of insulation, and then you add another 12 inches, you're adding twice again as much insulation. So that's twice again as much heat that's going to stay out in the summer and going to stay in the wintertime. So it's going to be a dramatic difference.
Think about it like adding that duvet cover in the wintertime.
Yeah,
right?
adding that extra quilt.
Yeah, adding that extra blanket.
It makes a difference.
And then, they always say, like, the fluffier the blanket, the warmer you are in the winter. That's why we add those down comforters or alternative down comforters. Is because it's adding that extra air and that insulation to keep you warm.
Okay, so it really does make a difference to have the extra insulation. Now, I looked up in my attic last year. I had to go up there for one reason or another, and I could not see the rafters, but when I moved things aside, it was just a little bit above the rafters. I think it was higher than that. The house is 16 years old.
Yep.
The insulation can settle, right?
Sure can.
Now, even though you had enough insulation up there earlier and it settled, you still got the same amount of insulation, but you're saying it's not working as hard?
That's right. The most important thing about the insulation is actually not the material of insulation itself, it's the air pockets in it. So the air pockets is what actually slows the movement of the heat energy.
So the fact that you had adequate insulation 15 or 20 years ago and it settled,
that's right.
You do not have adequate insulation now.
Might not now, for sure. And the good thing about progress is that insulation has changed. We're using the same material, but they're installing it differently, so it's not going to settle as much. Certainly when this cellulose insulation, just the ground up newspapers that we have here today.
Is that what the insulation is?
Yeah, ground up newspaper. So it's a great recycled product. And it's been around for a long time, but what's changed is how it's installed. And so that now the installation methods and some of the binders that are in the material help keep it from settling, and so it preserves its usefulness.
So what you're blowing into your attic is just ground up newspaper.
Yeah, it could be yesterday's Tribune for sure.
So, okay, what's the difference if you just go up and throw a bunch of newspapers up there?
Well, for one thing, the thing about this stuff is that it has some additives to it. One of the main ones is borax, and so people have used that a long time in detergent, things like that. What borax does is two things. It makes it fire retardant, and it also discourages pests. So that's going to be bugs, snakes, rodents, things like that. So they're not going to squirrels.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they're not going to be as comfortable up in the insulation.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the main differences for
Yeah,
sure.
because if you shut up your Tribune and just throw it up there,
It wouldn't be the same.
right, and also fire.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
let's not do that.
Now, the
That's
city
gonna
of
take a long
Columbia
time.
offers
Yeah.
the city of Columbia offers rebates.
We do. Yeah, so home performance with Energy Star, which I think we've talked about before. You know, if you have the energy contractor come out and do an assessment on your house, both with Boone Electric and with Water and Light, you're eligible for rebates if you make those improvements after your post-assessment.
Okay, and people listening to us who are outside of Boone County, if you would just contact your
Utility provider.
your utility provider and ask them if they have an Energy Star audit. Is that what it's called?
So home performance with Energy Star is what we do, but also a lot of the utilities just might have their own program for improving energy efficiency in their house.
Okay, check with them, and then if they come out and they do a check and you have the insulation added, you could be eligible for a rebate on that insulation.
Yeah.
Just off the top of your head, an average home to shoot some insulation into the attic, what are you talking about?
So through Columbia Water and Light, an 1,100 square foot house might cost around $750 to insulate. That's the cost to install the insulation.
Okay.
We also have rebates of somewhere between, depending on how much insulation you install, somewhere between $250 maybe to $300 in rebates.
And how long is it going to take you is that going to take to pay itself off?
Again, it's going to depend on how much insulation you install and how you heat, how expensive it is for you to heat your house.
Or
So
cool your house too.
heat or cool, yeah.
Right.
So generally that boils down to whether you do that with electricity or with gas. And it can be generally anywhere from about 2 to 8 years.
Okay.
Most of them are going to be around 3 to 5 years though.
But the point is you're going to feel a little more comfortable. You're going
right?
to feel more comfortable, right?
Feel more comfortable, and you're not going to be using as much energy, which has huge benefits to
all of us.
To the
Yeah.
planet. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, anything else you want to add there, Barbara Buffalo?
No, just, I always love coming on here. So thanks for letting me bring some really big props this time.
You really did. Thank you. And it's always a pleasure having you
Yeah,
with us.
Thank you. Thank
Barbara
you, Paul.
Buffalo and Eric Hempel. Thank you. Hempel.
Yep.
Eric Hempel.
That's the traditional way, so props to you.
Oh, I was calling you Humble, wasn't I? We're out of time for today. Tomorrow or Monday, Vision Safety in Missouri River Regional Library. Something you'd like to hear or see, drop me an email, pepperp@missouri.edu.